Good morning and happy July 4th from Sequoia State Park. We're so glad that you could join us today. We have some fun stories and Miss Angelina has a wonderful craft for you when we're done with our stories. The first one that I would like to read is by Adam Gamble. It's called Good Night America. You know, as I read this book, I bet some of you are going to say, I've been there, because this book shows some of the wonderful places that we go on our trips with our families, our vacations, and it shows some of our wonderful monuments, our beautiful oceans, all the things we have to be thankful for here in America. Good morning, Atlantic Ocean, whales and beach. Are you ready for a wonderful day? Hello, Statue of Liberty. I bet some of you have been to see the Statue of Liberty. Do you know what state that's in? Anybody? That would be New York. Happy spring, Washington, D.C., our national capital. There's the White House. There's the Washington Monument. And there's the American flag flying on each and every one of them. Greetings from the Everglades, home to the alligators and so many other creatures. If you've been to Florida, put out a wave. Good afternoon, Niagara Falls. Thundering day and night. Is that a rainbow in the mist? Good afternoon, Mississippi River, flowing through the middle of our country. Wow, this is one place I've only been once, the Grand Canyon, and I want to go again. See the Grand Canyon carved into the land by the Colorado River? Well, howdy, hot, dry desert lands. Howdy, Mr. Rattlesnake. Whoa, that cactus is pretty, but it's awfully prickly. Aloha, tropical islands. Isn't it fun playing on the beach when we go to Hawaii? Good afternoon, farmers. Good afternoon, amber waves of grain. Greetings, noble old redwood trees, older even than our country. Greetings, wild woods and grizzly bears and mountain lions. Good evening, Golden Gate Bridge. Who's been to San Francisco and seen the Golden Gate Bridge? I have. That's where I went on my honeymoon, actually. Sleep well, sea lions resting on the shore of the Pacific Ocean. Glitter bright city lights. Have a nice night. Good night, herd of handsome buffalo on the Great Prairie. Where would we find a buffalo? Oh, we would find one right here in our state of Oklahoma. Sleep tight, cows and horses, cowgirls and cowboys. Live free, brave, bald eagle. Stay warm together in your nest. And our craft today is going to be this guy, the bald eagle. So stay tuned. I have one more quick story, and then you can do your craft. Okay. 'Twas the night before July 4th. I bet you all know. 'Twas the night before Christmas when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. Well, today we are going to do the version written by Amy Wummer for the 4th of July. The night before the 4th of July. This is a brand new book and the pages are sticking on me. Sorry about that. 'Twas the night before July 4th and all across the USA, Americans were gearing up for Independence Day. Mom tied up the buntings while Dad gave a hand. We hung up the flag from our porch stand. That night, we both slept, sprawled out in our beds, while visions of fireworks popped up in our heads. The very next morning, we dressed up in red, white, and blue. I even wore stars, one on each shoe. We lined up on Main Street. Look, here comes the parade floats. Hooray for the marching band and the 4-H club goats. Do the goats? Oh, they do. They have blue and red collars. Looky there. I was going to see, are they dressed up for the 4th? The mayor tossed candy and I shouted, here, here. And Uncle Uncle Sam, walking on stilts, brought up the rear. Friends and family came over for a backyard barbecue. Dad fired up the grill as a storm started to brew. The goodies were set on the picnic table with care. Get 'em while they're hot, hollered Dad, flipping burgers in the air. But just when we sat down, it started to pour. Grab the food, shouted Mom. And we raced through the door. In hot dogs, in salads, in blueberry pie, in melon and corn, keep those potato chips dry. We gathered in the kitchen and spilled into the hall. Squeeze in, said Mom, there's room for us all. As we munched on our food, Grandma turned to Grandpop. There'll be no fireworks show if this rain doesn't stop. What? What? We all shouted. No rockets' red glare? 4th of July without fireworks? Oh, that's totally not fair. When what to our wondering eyes should appear, with the rain suddenly stopping in the sky, was now clear. We piled in the car and drove to the park. We threw down a blanket as it began to grow dark. Dad lit the sparklers. We drew circles in the air. We snapped glow sticks on our wrist and glow halos in our hair. The first firework was launched high into the night. It bloomed like a flower, exploding with light. Whiz, crackle, boom, woo-hoo, shouted the crowd. But my brother covered his ears and he whimpered, it's too loud. The band played the national anthem. Dad stood up, put his hand across his heart, and sang, oh, can you see? But that's when I covered my ears because he was so out of key. And now, yay, the grand finale. Wow, the best I'd seen yet. A sky filled with color, a show I'll never forget. When the last firework fizzled like fairy dust in the sky, we all cheered and shouted, Happy 4th of July. Thank you, boys and girls. I hope that you all have a great 4th of July. Remember to stay safe. And now it's time for your craft.
Hi everyone, aren't we so lucky to have Mrs. Sandwick here at the park? If you've ever come and stayed with us and stayed at the Choctaw Camp Loop, you might have seen Mrs. Sandwick and her husband in their golf cart driving around and taking care of everyone. And then we're lucky that she has some great books and will come and share them with us. So now it's time for our craft. And like she said, we are going to be making a bald eagle today. And this is actually a little bald eagle stuffed animal that Mrs. Sandwick brought to us from the Crystal Bridges. And what I like about this one is it makes a noise and it sounds pretty accurate. So a lot of times when you hear bald eagles in movies or shows, it's actually a red-tailed hawk, because bald eagles don't sound so glamorous. So if you are getting started today, we are going to have a piece of paper to put our bald eagle on, and then a brown and a white and a yellow. And we can start by cutting out this shape that will be the body of the bald eagle. So it might be easier to see on here. So it's almost a rectangle, but rounded on the edges. So if you want to just draw that on your piece of paper here. So this will be the bald eagle's body or its torso. And bald eagles can weigh anywhere from like 8 to 14 pounds. So they weigh, think about like a big cat or a little chihuahua or little dog, which that might not seem like a whole lot for such a big bird, but think about they have to fly with that. So they have to use their muscles to fly in the air and carry like 8 pounds. Plus, when they pick up something to eat, then they double their weight. So they're picking up those big fish or waterfowl or even like snakes, and they're carrying more weight than even their body. So we've cut out our little rectangle, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And then next on our brown piece of paper, we are going to trace our hands. And so you want to space it out on your paper so both of your hands fit, or your one hand fits twice. And it's okay to use a pencil or a marker to trace before we cut it out, because then we can use the flip side of it, and so we won't see our lines. And you might be thinking, wow, I usually trace my hand to make a turkey, not a bald eagle. But that's actually really funny, because the bald eagle is our national bird. But do you know what almost was the national bird? The turkey. So when the United States was founded and our Constitution was written, we didn't necessarily have a national bird. The bald eagle was adopted in 1782, and some founding fathers thought it wasn't a good representation of our country because bald eagles are scavengers sometimes. So sometimes we think of them as like majestic hunters, and they are. And so you might see them over a lake or a river catching a big fish and carrying it off. But also you might see them on the side of the road next to vultures scavenging for food, or maybe at the dump, or outside a chicken coop, or like a chicken house, where they're just eating whatever they can find. And to me, that makes them smart, right? They're not exerting extra effort to catch something. They're eating whatever's already available. But some of the founding fathers disagreed, and they said that the bald eagle was not a good example of our country, that the turkey was a much better example. Do you think we'd still have Thanksgiving if it was the turkey? We do have turkeys that are pardoned every year for Thanksgiving, but do you think we'd be celebrating eating our national bird? I don't know. The bald eagle was chosen because it's a North American species, so it doesn't occur in Europe, where a lot of the founding fathers came from, but it's a species that we have here in the United States and Canada as well. So I have my one hand, or wing, and the bone structure of birds' wings are actually fairly similar to our hands, but bats, if you look at bats' wings, they're very similar bones to our hands. So now we're going to trace our hand again, and it's okay if you want to trace your left hand again if you're right-handed and it's easier to draw with your right hand. And when bald eagles are young, their wings look a lot like this with these individual feathers. And our good friend Jim Harmon had a good explanation. It's like those young birds have training wheels. They have very finger-like feathers to help when they're learning how to fly. It kind of helps them slow down and guide their movement. So we're gonna cut out the second one. Bald eagles can have a wingspan of 6 to 8 feet. So a wingspan means when they're stretched out, it's the tip of one wing to the tip of the other. And so that can be 6 to 8 feet, which a tall person is 6 feet. So think of like an NBA player, like really tall, is how far they stretch from one side to the other. And when bald eagles first hatch, first of all, they have really big eggs, and most bald eagles lay 1 to 3 eggs. So sometimes they can have like 3 chicks, but a lot of times they just have 1 chick in the nest, and their chicks are big, and their nests have to be big too. So their nests are like the size of a car, like a Volkswagen Beetle, like a sled bug. And then they have big eggs, and then they have big chicks. And their big chicks are all brown when they hatch. So my hands are big compared to kid hands. So I'm going to use this big one that I cut out earlier. So then we're going to cut out the bald eagle head, which is pretty much the most famous part of a bald eagle, right? So you know the word bald means not having any hair, fur, feathers, but bald eagle heads aren't actually bald, they just have white feathers. But it is a really distinct characteristic of bald eagles. Like this all white head, when you see them in the sky, you know exactly what they are. It's this huge bird with a white head. And this does a good job of showing it's kind of jagged because it is feathers and it's big white feathers. And so it's not a straight line because all the way the feathers lay. So if you want to use your body and put it on your white paper, and then you can see how big your head needs to be to fit on the top. And so it's kind of an egg shape, and then the bottom jagged. And it almost looks like a ghost to me. So I'm going to cut out this head. So bald eagles in the wild live typically 15 to 25 years. That's a good average lifespan. And they are not adult bald eagles until they're like 4 or 5 years old. And so I said when they're chicks, they're all brown. And they stay brown for several years until they're about 4 or 5. And then they have that white head and also some other things on them change colors. So here's my head. So when they're young, their beak and their eyes are brown. But when they get older, they're famous for this big yellow, really hooked beak, and their eyes turn yellow too. So we are going to draw on our yellow, or if you need to do it on white and color it yellow, we are going to do a big hooked beak and yellow feet. So you can use your head, put it down there to kind of see a scale of how big your beak needs to be. And it's a straight line on one end, and then like a big hook, almost like a toucan. Let's see. I'll draw it in marker for you. And if you go to a zoo or come here and see our bald eagle Taurus, you'll see they have this big beak, and it's very sharp and hooked. And it's because they're carnivorous, so they eat meat. And they have to have really strong talons and a strong beak to not only catch their prey, but also to be able to eat it. And so Taurus definitely has a big, very strong beak. And it's sharp because he eats fish and birds, and he doesn't have a knife and fork. He has his talons and his beak, and he rips them apart to be able to eat them in bites that he can safely swallow. And birds don't choose to be meat eaters or choose to be vegetarians. They've evolved to be one way or another. And so we have to feed him what his body is made to eat. We don't get to choose that all of a sudden he's going to be a vegetarian. So next we're going to draw their feet. And they actually have 3 toes parts on the front and then 1 on the back. And so that allows them to really grip their food well. So if you've ever seen them in the air carrying a big fish, but the way we're making our craft, you're only going to see those front 3 claws. So I'll draw a big one to show you what it looks like. And it almost looks like a fork. So if you want to draw 2 of those, and you can put your body on here to see how big it needs to be. So we're going to cut out those feet, and their feet are also yellow, the same color as their beak and their eyes. I think those are going to be too small. And it's okay if they're too small or too big and you need to draw them again. You might know that bald eagles were once listed as an endangered species. And this happened in the late 1970s. And they were kind of the main animal that was the picture of what an endangered species is. So you might know the word danger, and that's pretty much what endangered means. It means in danger of becoming extinct. There aren't very many of those animals left, and scientists were worried their numbers were so low that they wouldn't be able to continue on as a species. And this was due to many reasons. So one big one was habitat loss. So that means there's not enough places for them to live. Bald eagles live in these big nests, and you often find them alongside rivers or ponds, lakes, big bodies of water where they can get their fish and their waterfowl that they're eating. And humans were cutting down trees and building houses and damming rivers and changing that habitat so that they didn't have a good place to live. Another big thing was a pesticide. So a pesticide is a chemical that you spray on your crops, your plants, and it's meant to kill the bugs that are eating your plants. However, when you spray something into the environment, it doesn't stay just on the one thing you sprayed, it stays in the environment. And so that pesticide was going into the waterway, which I said all their food's coming from the water, so it was getting into fish. And then when the bald eagles would go and eat the fish, they would eat this poison. And then when they went to lay their eggs, and I said they only lay 1 to 3 eggs a year. They only have that one nest. They'd lay their eggs, and their eggs would be so fragile that when this 8-pound bird went to incubate, it would crush its own egg. People were also shooting bald eagles because they thought they were eating their cows and other things in their farms. And so bald eagles, there were not very many of them left in the whole United States. Alaska was still good. They had a lot of bald eagles. But in the lower 48 states, we didn't have very many left. And now in Oklahoma, we have over 200 nesting pairs. That means 400 birds that are laying nests in our state, which is crazy. That's way beyond what scientists expected of them to recover in this time frame. So they're no longer listed as endangered, but they are still protected, which all of our birds, our migratory birds, are protected. So they're protected under the Migratory Bird Act, as well as the Bald and Golden Eagle Act. So you cannot possess any part of them. That means you can't own any part. So if you find a feather in the woods, just leave it there because it's protected as a migratory bird. Also, bird feathers are kind of gross. They can have mites and different parasites living on them. So hopefully you've had some time to cut everything out. And we have a bald eagle coming together here. So I'm going to use some googly eyes probably. But like I said, their eyes are actually yellow. So if you want to draw yellow eyes on. So I have my body part down here, and I'm going to put some glue for my little legs. And then on the back of the body, so I have the legs on the front, and on the back, I'm going to put some glue and put my handprints. And I'm going to put mine with the thumbs up because that looks right to me. Obviously, that's not what their wings really look like, so it doesn't matter. Whatever you think looks best. And then that white head that is kind of the iconic look. And then that big hooked yellow beak. And actually, so some birds you might know, like cardinals, the male is really vibrant red and the female is more of like a brown, not as pretty. And that's a lot of birds and a lot of animals in the animal kingdom. The male is more attractive than the female, but especially in birds. However, bald eagles, the male and the female look the same, except the female is typically bigger. So male bald eagles are smaller than the females. Mine looks kind of goofy. I don't know if Taurus, my bald eagle, would be impressed with my craft. But I think that looks pretty good. You can see how big their wings are. And then their big old beak. And they have a white tail too, but we can't see that because it would be on the back of our craft. So one more time, let's listen to our bald eagle. And I hope you all have seen our bald eagle Taurus, or maybe are going to come and see him this summer or in the future. And our bald eagle is very old. So like I said, they live 15 to 25 years in the wild, and ours is 41. He had an injury to his left wing. He flew into a power line when he was 15 years old, and the infection was so bad that vets had to amputate or cut off his wing so that he could live. And so he has lived in captivity, which means with people inside an enclosure, for 26 years now. He's been here at our park since 2011. And he's a small bird because he's a male, and he's missing a 3-foot long wing, and he's old. So he's small, but still when people come, they can't believe how big he is. We're really lucky to have him here, and we think he's a magnificent creature. So hopefully wherever you are for 4th of July, you're enjoying your wildlife and watching birds and picking up trash and not blowing off fireworks so that nature can be observed and appreciated. Because when we're leaving trash and making a lot of noise, we're not going to see nature. So I hope you all had a good craft today and story time. If you have any questions about bald eagles, you can leave them in the comments. And feel free to ask me any questions about bald eagles that you might have at home. And we'll see you next week. I don't know, if you have any craft suggestions, you can drop them. If not, I will let you know what craft we're doing. Have a happy and safe 4th of July.